Hey there, Holly. How you doing?
I'm good, Sandy. How are you?
I'm good. I'm just seeing the numbers rolling in now that we've hit our start broadcast button. I can see
Great.
all the rocking up. It's wonderful.
Welcome, everyone. I think we'll get going in a few minutes' time, but thanks for joining us and stay posted for the start of the broadcast.
If I might ask if there's anyone. Oh, okay. We've got one message here saying from Janice saying she can't hear anything. Jackie, you're welcome. Um, so Janice, you're saying you can't hear anything. We've done our sound checks and we think everything's working at our end. So my suggestion would be maybe well, not that she can hear me say this, to exit and come back out. If anyone does have problems during the webinar, that's often the easiest and quickest and most direct fix, is just to exit the webinar and come back in. Yes, Jackie, I could type it in if I could type really fast. Hi, Patricia. Anyone who can hear me and knows how to use this platform, maybe type into your question pane, where are you dialing in from today? Because that'd be nice to share, I think, Holly, to see where all the women have come in from.
Yeah, definitely. It'd be good to see where we're coming in from across Australia.
I'm just going to send Janice a message about try exiting and re-entering. Let me just send that to her and see if that helps her. So we got anybody saying where they are? Oh, Parramatta, Brisbane, Camden, Toowoomba, Melbourne, where we're finally getting some sunshine, aren't we, Dana? Sunshine Coast, Perth, Mount Waverley, Melbourne,
All
Albury.
over here.
Oh, it's wonderful. It's just one. Oh, I see a couple from. That's great.
Great. Well, good afternoon, everyone, and many thanks for joining us for this very special broadcast today. I'm Holly Baldwin, and I'm going to be facilitating this webinar with Sandy Givens. I'm from Informa Corporate Learning, and we are delighted to have Sandy here today to talk on the very important topic of how can women be more effectively assertive. Now, we've been working with Sandy for a number of years on a couple of programs she works with us on. So moving up to leadership for women being one, and confidence and assertiveness for women being the second one. And they're always our most popular courses, the highest number of registrants and fantastic feedback. So we're really lucky to have Sandy here with us today. From knowing Sandy as I do, I know she's passionate about really kind of driving change within the organisations and individuals she works with. She really wants to make sure people can find what she calls her courageous voice in all aspects of their lives. And Sandy's written a fantastic book called Women on the Move, and really kind of making sure you can create your place in the world. So we'll talk a bit more about that book later, but I would encourage you guys to kind of get a copy and read that if you can. So before we go any further, this is going to be a 30-minute broadcast followed by a Q&A session. So please do get involved. I know a few of you were answering some good questions before we started. So please do keep them rolling in. We'll try and get through as many as we possibly can. So before we go ahead, Sandy, do you have anything to add before we'd like to start the Q&A sessions?
No, I'm just pleased to be here and really thrilled. Gosh, you gave me such a rap in the introduction. I hope I'm going to live up to what may be expectations now.
I'm sure you will. We're also, guys, doing some polls as we go through. So please do get involved with the polls as well. They'll give Sandy the best chance to obviously kind of bounce off everything you guys are saying. So Sandy, let's get started. I know you're really passionate about this topic. So why is it that you're so passionate about helping women within the workplace?
Oh, well, I knew you were going to ask, so I prepared a very spotted version. I think the real impetus started for me way back in 1989, where I feel like I had quite a defining moment in my life, having kind of crawled up the corporate ladder and made my way to supervisor, team leader, and eventually manager. I was a national training manager with a team of 17 people reporting to me. And I thought, this is the pinnacle, I've made it. And I remember the fateful day, it was February 18th, 1989, when I went for my annual budget review with my boss, and he started the whole meeting by pushing all my papers to the side and took my hand in his and sort of patted it gently and asked me, Now, Sandy, when are you going off to have babies? Now, when I tell that story in a workshop setting, you can hear the gasps across the room. And whoa, how did you respond? And I can't honestly tell you how I responded, probably not well at all. But having said that, I remember going home that night and realizing I had enough money in my bank account to keep me going for a couple of months. And so February 19th, 1989 was when I resigned and set up my own company. I don't recommend that to anyone on the line today, Holly. I didn't have a business plan, a marketing plan, but I had a fire in my belly. And the fire in my belly was to not be treated in such a patronizing, chauvinistic way, and work with clients who were easier to work with. The second thing that happened for me was 1994, when my dream of becoming a mother came true for me. And long story short, I sadly ended up with a very severe case of postnatal depression. And when I say sadly, I am also very grateful for the experience, because although horrendous at the time, part of my recovery involved my learning from my psychiatrist who was helping me recover, learning that I needed to be assertive on behalf of myself. I had always been very assertive on behalf of the rest of the world, on behalf of my team, on behalf of neighbors and friends, but to actually stand up for me and start to say no to things that stretched me to the point of breaking me, or even being able to voice what I needed, priorities were, was a really big thing for me. I grew up as a people pleaser, and a lot of the women I've worked with over the years tell me they identify with that quite strongly. And I guess that leads me to my third point, and that is, over the years, I've found that women have many common challenges. And I don't for a minute believe I've got all the answers. I have learned through my experience of life and through the experiences of other women that there are strategies we can use to overcome with and more effectively deal with these challenges. I mean, women typically tell me that they often feel really unheard and very undervalued, both at work and sometimes outside of work. They also long for this wonderful thing called work-life balance, but they feel like they're juggling so many balls between their work life and their personal life, and just have no idea how to live a more satisfying life with all the demands. And finally, a lot of women feel like they have so many skills and talents and capabilities that aren't being utilized, that they're increasingly frustrated and increasingly exhausted by trying to be heard.
Awesome, that's great, Sandy. Thanks for sharing that with us. The next question is something that I actually personally am really interested to hear some of your thoughts on. So why do you think it is that women find it so difficult to be as assertive as they'd like to be?
Look, there's 101 theories about it, I think, Holly. One of them being, of course, if you go back way back to cavemen days, you know, the men were the ones who went out and hunted and brought the food home, and the women were the ones that looked after the camp and looked after the children and were the nurturers and the caregivers. So to rise above that, to actually stand up and step into what I call our leadership, I think that's quite challenging, and I think it's almost kind of semi-genetic. But I'm going to bring up a poll now for everyone on the line to cast their vote. You'll see this poll, we're asking the question of which of the following stops you from being assertive, and you can choose as many of these as apply to you. So I'm just going to mute my microphone for a minute, and we'll give them about 10 seconds to vote. Holly? I can see we've got about half of the people online having voted, so let's give them another 10 seconds to vote.
That's great. Your vote coming in.
Yeah, I'm counting down in my head. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Now, I should have said too before I launched the poll, this is absolutely anonymous. Holly and I can't see who's saying what, but I'm sharing the results of the poll now because I think all of you on the line can take heart, and you can easily see by this you are not alone. What have we got here, Holly? I need to put my glasses on, I think. There we go. 57% both saying they're worried they'll be seen as bossy, pushy, or even aggressive, as well as fear of causing conflict, closely followed by fear of offending someone, wanting to be seen as helpful and as a team player, and just feeling like I have to say yes to everything. So if I just shrink that down now so that I don't have to read it. Those results that we've got there, Holly, are incredibly typical of what women tell me when I'm working with them face-to-face in workshops or coaching situations. The sort of things that stop us are exactly this fear of causing conflict, fear of people not liking me, even, you know, being seen as not being a team player. Somebody's asked me for help now and I say no, then I go to ask them for help in the future and they're unlikely to help me. So it's kind of like the feeling that people mentally keep scorecards. And as we saw in the poll, a lot of us get to a point in our lives where we just feel that's what we do. It's almost like we're, I don't want to say habit, because we often think habits are bad things, and you can have good habits, but it's almost like instinctive that we say yes to requests that are made of us, or instinctive that we go along and not rock the boat. And all of those reasons really come from a sense of either fear of something that might happen and or guilt about something that we might cause that we don't want to cause. And that's often what keeps us locked in, I think, Holly. Those exactly what the poll showed us.
Definitely. Thanks for getting involved in the polls, guys, there. I think moving on, Sandy, I mean, you offer participants a different, I guess, definition of assertiveness. So isn't it just a halfway point between being kind of aggressive as opposed to submissive?
Well, it's a very common belief. Like all of us have heard of these terms of aggressive, which is really someone forcing their opinion onto someone else, or the term submissive, which is saying whatever you want is fine with me. And I think it's really important that we redefine assertiveness. And often what I do is bring up a scale, like what you're seeing on your screen at the moment. And I say to women, if we have this scale where 0 represents submissive behavior, where we're giving in to everyone else's requests of us and giving up on voicing what's important to us, let's say at 100 is where we would put aggressiveness, where it's kind of my way or no way. I'm going to launch another poll here, Holly, and ask women on the line to vote. Where on that scale would you put assertiveness? Now, in this poll, you can only choose one answer. So we've given you a couple of brackets there to choose from. Where on that where on that scale, I should say, would you put assertiveness? Let's give them a few minutes to do that. I'll mute my microphone and have another sip of water.
Good plan, Sandy. I'd say personally, just to kind of add my thoughts into the mix, I'd probably say less than 50.
All right. And that's, well, we're going to see in the poll in a minute. That's very typical. 5 more seconds to vote if you want your vote to be included here.
We'll be able to see if I'm in keeping with the majority or slightly different on that one, Sandy.
Yeah. Actually, you're not with the majority at the moment. Let's share the results and see what everyone has said. So we've got, coming up on our screens now, and again, I just need to enlarge this so I can read it properly. So the majority have said, well, actually the highest vote there was 30% for between 50 and 75. You're down in the 14%, Holly, with 14 with the vote of less than 50. And interestingly, you have 23% of the people on the line saying, I can't say because it depends on the situation. So let me share my thoughts on that, and hope that women won't dislike me too much when I share this next part on the slide. Because my question is, trying to measure assertiveness on this scale is in fact a large part of our problem as women trying to find out what assertiveness is. You see, my feeling is if we put it on this scale as a number, whether that number is less than 50, exactly at 50, or more than 50, it's like there's a point on this scale where when I'm speaking in exactly a certain way, at exactly a certain volume, and my body is exactly in a certain position, then I know I'm being assertive. And as soon as I start to raise my voice, I've slipped off that point and become aggressive. Or as soon as I start to go, oh, well, maybe I could, then I've slipped and become submissive. Now, the issue with the idea of it depending on the situation, often I say to women, well, you know, what would be all the criteria you'd be things like, who am I talking to? What's the actual issue? Is there a reporting relationship between myself and this other person? What's my history of dealing with this other person? Did I sleep well last night? You know, like, do I feel well resourced to have this conversation? And the problem with that is if our minds are racing with trying to weigh up and examine all those different ideas in the moment, we miss the opportunity to actually respond assertively. So I do provide women with a very different way of looking at assertiveness by providing them with a model that fundamentally says this. The model gives women a framework for recognizing that assertiveness really is about acknowledging another person's needs and their perspective, as well as staying true to our own needs and our own perspectives. As you know, Holly, knowing me as you do, you know I love collecting quotes, and this one to me says it all. Assertiveness is your ability to act in harmony with your self-esteem without hurting others. And I guess I would add a couple of words there, without intentionally hurting others. There's times when I've been assertiveness and people say to me, oh, I found that really hurtful. So that was not my intention. And I certainly say to them, look, that wasn't my intention, and I apologize. I don't want to hurt your feelings or upset you in the way this has obviously impacted you. Can we please talk about it? And also the other thing I'd add, acting in harmony with your self-esteem, which to me means acting in alignment with your needs, your values, your priorities, all the things that are important to you. And yeah, the model that we go through in the workshops really helps women have a framework or structure for understanding how that can work for them.
Awesome, Sandy. I think you kind of hit the nail on the head there, that it is a fine balance and it's about working with what works for your personality and your kind of self-esteem levels, but I appreciate it can sometimes be a bit of a fine line there. So moving on, so I guess if women are going to be assertive according to your kind of new definition and kind of guidelines with assertiveness, are they kind of guaranteed to get what they want when they're trying to negotiate effectively for things?
Sadly, no. Like I said at the start, I don't do this work because I've got my life all handled, or that I can teach, you know, follow these 3 steps and I can guarantee you always get what you want. Well, if I had the magic formula, I'd be a very rich woman, I reckon, because a lot of people would buy that formula quite readily. So I always say to women, look, following the ideas that we toss around here in this workshop isn't going to guarantee you will get what you want, but I can guarantee that the more we are assertive, the more we take action to live according to our values and our needs, the more proud we are of ourselves, the more we can give ourselves a pat on the back and say, go me. You know, I spoke up in that situation just now where in the past I didn't. And so as we start to take these steps towards being more assertive, our confidence, our sense of worth, our self-esteem, our pride, all of those increase, and I guarantee that happens.
And Sandy, knowing you as I do, I know you're a very practical person. So in terms of what women can start to do straight away to be more assertive, what would your advice be on that point?
Well, yes, I am very practical. And when I talk about models or frameworks, to me, theory for the sake of theory, I always want to say, so what? What can I do with that? So a way of getting started for all the women on the line right now is think about it in terms of 6 vital characteristics. First of all, to me, assertiveness is clear. And I think the best way to be clear is to be brief, because we all know if someone's come up to us and gone on and on and on and on and they're talking, you know, we stop listening way back here at the start. So when we're going to be assertive, I think it's looking at how can I say what I want to say as briefly as possible. To me, assertiveness is also honest. It's not hinting. You know, a lot of times we can say, "Oh, I'm a little bit angry about that," when the truth of it is we're incredibly angry about it. So being honest with ourselves and honest when we communicate what's going on for us. Assertive communication is always clean, and by that I mean not blaming the other person. It's ever so tempting to say, you know, you make me so mad when you such and such and what I want you to do. And look, I really think every time we say the word you, we might as well get our finger out and point like that. So it's stepping away from it and not blaming the other person, but staying focused on our honest. And speaking of the word focused, to me assertiveness is most effective when it's focused on one issue at a time. Even though it can be incredibly tempting as we get involved in a conversation to kind of open up the closet and pull out all the skeletons from the past. And, you know, another thing, 2 months, 5 days, and 6 hours ago, you said such and such to me. We're most likely to be effective in our assertiveness when we stay focused on the one issue that we want to resolve with this person. Assertiveness is always polite. It's not an excuse to be rude or swear or anything like that. And the final characteristic, I think, is assertiveness is persistent. Sometimes being assertive takes more than conversation. I maintain, though, that if it's important to you, then it's worth having another conversation and seeing if you can resolve the issue. And one of the things we do on the workshop, Holly, is talk about how to decide what is and isn't important to you. So in terms of getting started, for everyone on the line, if at the end of a conversation you can answer yes to those 6 questions, was I clear, was I honest, was I clean, was I focused on one issue, was I polite, and am I willing to be persistent, then I'd say thumbs up to you, you're being assertive.
Awesome. Are we going to launch a poll there, Sandy?
Good call. Did I forget one, did I? We were going to talk about dealing with people, different people to ourselves, yeah?
Yes, we can move on to how helpful is it to focus on gender differences in the workplace?
Sure, okay. Well, let's talk about that, because often running these workshops, women ask me about, you know, do I have to become more masculine in how I'm approaching things or whatever? And look, I trained as a psychologist and I'm fascinated by people. There's a lot of different types of differences we can look at. Gender is one of them. Different types of communication styles, different personality styles, generational styles, like Gen Xers and baby boomers are motivated by very different things, particularly in the workplace. And even the cultural differences that we find in workplaces. Now, my belief, Holly, is that when we look at any kind of model, whether it's a model that looks at gender differences, personality differences, whatever, the real purpose of those models is to give us different filters or ways of viewing the differences between us so that we can better understand, accept, respect, and work with those differences. And I agree, gender is one of them. I sometimes think that there are times when women overly focus on gender difference, as opposed to looking at, look, the difference and the friction may actually be coming from values, a huge discrepancy in values, or a huge discrepancy in personality. So I caution all of us, I guess, to make sure we're not stereotyping, because I don't like to be stereotyped, and I think it's important we make sure we don't do the same to, you know, towards men, for instance. But what you were alluding for, the bring up, is that a lot of times one of the reasons we're wanting to be assertive is because we have to deal with these difficult people in our lives. So this is the poll. I'll bring it up now, Holly. A poll that's simply asking everyone on the line to vote for one of these options that we've got here. And that is, the question simply is, do you feel you have to deal with difficult people in your life? So pick, actually I've said here, yes, no, you can select all that apply. There you go. So let's give everybody a chance to have a vote. We've got about 50% voted, so Holly, let's give people another 10 seconds.
Awesome. Just a reminder, guys, as well, it is all still anonymous, so please do feel free to be quite open on this one.
Yes, absolutely anonymous, and also a reminder too that we're probably coming into the last 5 minutes or so of what you and I wanted to share with everyone on the line. Oh, excuse me, I did need that water. And they could be typing their questions into the question panel if they have any they'd like us to address. Wow, so nearly all voted. Let's look at what the results show us. Holly, I need another sip of water and I need to cough. I'm going to ask you to just talk about these results that are on the screen while I deal with that.
Yeah, no worries at all. So again, as I was coming in, thanks for the votes with them. It looks like at work is the place where people struggle the most to have difficult conversations and difficult people, which I don't think is going to be a surprise for a lot of people. Also at home as well, which is understandable, the people that we spend a lot of time with, and quite a few coming in for public as well. So it's quite a mix there, Sandy, but I think the strongest point for that poll is very much the workplace that people are focusing on in terms of, you know, dealing with difficult people and situations there.
Thank you for doing that. I'm better now. I had a good cough and a nice glass of water. Oh, I realized the webcam's on as well. Which I guess, you know, one of the things I hope women are getting from this webinar, or getting from me, is that I'm definitely the what you see is what you get person. So I saw you would have all just seen me having the water and everything. Look, the thing I wanted to say in regard to that, what we're seeing on the screen there, Holly, is we've got a small percentage, not really, I just ignore them. That is great if you truly are ignoring them. If you're truly not storing stuff inside as a result of your interactions with some of these people that you find difficult. I know for me, as a people pleaser, I often, you know, would say to myself, yeah, I'll just ignore that. But the truth of the matter was, it left baggage in me. I still was frustrated. It was almost like there were many times I can remember where I was like a pot of boiling water with a lid on top that didn't have a steam escape valve. And so it was like, you know, just hold it together, hold it together, hold it together. And I firmly encourage women to recognize that when we're feeling that in our body, that is a literal and important energy to recognize. And just as we eventually have to take the lid off the boiling water to let the steam escape, we need to do that too. And we need to learn how to do it in a healthy and appropriate way. So if you are truly able to ignore the difficult people, and I'm seeing several messages come up now saying that's so true. Also a question, can you see the question there about a bully? Holly, do you want me to answer that one now? There's a question, how can we be assertive at work? Are you there, Holly? Hopefully I haven't lost her.
I can see that one.
Yeah, do you want me to deal with that now?
Yeah, we've had a couple of questions trickle in after this session, which the majority will deal with at the end, but if you can deal with that one now, that would be fantastic.
Okay, I'll leave the rest of them for you to track. Look, the thing about bullying, and it's a really important issue, again, there's always a fine line, but if you look at the Fair Work Act, the Fair Work Act defines bullying as repeated behavior that leaves someone feeling undermined, unsafe, and unable to work at their best. So to me, if it is that level of stuff that's happening, then I would, the person who's asked that question, whose name we won't mention obviously, but anyone, if you feel there's bullying going on at work, then I urge you to go see someone human resources or call your EAP people, the Employee Assistance Program people, because bullying is a serious issue in a lot of our work environments. So if you feel that what's happening definitely qualifies as bullying, that I would suggest doing that and not worry about being assertive. But if it's somebody who, you know, often what happens in work, Holly, is people make comments kind of, and they think they're being funny. You know, they think they're just being lighthearted about it. And yet for us, we find it hurtful. And I think in those sort of situations, it's really worthwhile looking at how can you have an assertive conversation with that person that doesn't blame them or make them wrong for doing or saying what they're saying, but simply says, this thing that's happening is having this impact on me. And what I'd appreciate is for those things that are happening to not happen anymore. One of my premises, Holly, is that I think a lot of times we'll label people as difficult when in fact they're just very different to us. Now, a lot of times in workshops, we get, no, what if they're just difficult? Yes, there are some people in the world who seem that way, but I honestly believe they're in the minority. I think often what we perceive as difficult is difficult for us because it is so different to how we would do something. And so by looking at frameworks of personality or gender communication styles, that's when we start to be able to understand where that difference comes from and how to work with it more effectively.
I think that that particular session there, Sandy, instigated a lot of interest in people, a lot of questions kind of flying in on that one. So guys, please do kind of keep them coming, and Sandy will kind of get to the rest of them at the end of this session. So I guess we're conscious we don't have too much more time left, so please do keep them coming. But Sandy, I guess what would be the main differences you'd say between the two programs you won of moving up to leadership for women and then the confidence and assertiveness for women course? What's the kind of main differentiator there?
Look, the easiest way I think to explain it is the confidence and assertiveness program for women has more of an inward focus. And by that I mean we look at, we do a lot of self-reflection, looking at our values, our beliefs, and what would be our ideal life. And for many women, they go, goodness, I haven't thought about this like for years. We also look at the building blocks of self-esteem and what specific steps we can take to increase our sense of confidence in ourselves and our self-esteem. And we look at dealing with gender and personality differences. And in regard to personality, we specifically look at the DISC model of personality. Moving up to leadership has more of an outward focus, and by that I mean we're looking at how to lead people. Differences between managing and leading. We look at value-based leadership, and a fantastic bit of research done about the 5 practices of exemplary leadership and how can we take those practices on board. We look at delegation and feedback and also performance management. And we look again at dealing with gender and personality differences, but we use a different personality model there called the temperament model. And in both programs, though, we cover 2 common topics, if you like. The issue of reframing our negative self-talk, because, again, most have much louder, more frequent negative voices in our head than positive voices. And we also look at the model of assertiveness that I've talked about, because I think it's incredibly important in both those programs to look at those things.
Perfect. And I guess if we're kind of looking towards wrapping this up, Sandy, what would be the #1 message you'd like to leave participants with today?
Well, you told me you were going to ask me that question, and I couldn't limit myself to one, Holly. So I've got kind of 4, and one leads to another to another. The first is start to know and really value ourselves. So often when we get a compliment as a woman, we dismiss it or diminish it or demean it. So if somebody says, oh, that's a nice blouse you have on, Sandy, I go, oh, this old thing I've had it 10 years. Or, oh, Sandy, I like your hair. Oh, really? I think it's a bit too long. So even when someone pays us a compliment, we're not allowing that to go in and own it. So start from the the premise of starting to really understand and accept and value ourselves. From that, I truly believe we will build our confidence significantly, and with our confidence built, we are better able and equipped and prepared to be assertive. And when we're assertive, we can be more effective leaders. Now, I often ask women how many leaders are in the room, and I can see women mentally checking the organization chart. You know, where do I sit on this? To me, leadership has nothing to do with organization charts or titles on business cards. It has everything to do with using our skills and talents as much as we can. It has everything to do with reaching out and positively impacting people around us. So that would be my final message to women on the line, is to really look at how can I start that process of valuing myself, building my confidence, learning how to be more assertive, and actually live my leadership, because it's within all of us. I really believe that.
Right. Well, thanks for those closing messages there, Sandy. And thank you so much for the time today to go through that with us. I think you've given everyone here a lot of kind of food for thought, but I also know it's just a tip of the iceberg on the kind of learnings and support that you give women. One thing I'd like to mention to everybody else on the line as well is that Sandy is going to be starting up some community groups for everybody that goes through her training programs to offer kind of additional support and a platform for women to be able to communicate. So we'll be sending out a survey post this webinar, and we really appreciate your kind of feedback and thoughts on what platform we should host that in. So we're looking at the moment about whether it's going to be LinkedIn or Facebook. There's been a couple of differing kind of opinions on that, so we'd very much welcome your opinion on those as well. So yeah, please do get involved with that, and we'll send out a bit more information about that post-webinar. But I guess moving on, we would also like as a special thank you for everybody who's been on the line today, to be able to offer you guys some discounts for some further learning with us and Sandy. So for everyone who's been on the line today, we can offer you guys a 15% discount off the super early bird rate. So this is even lower than our kind of bulk buy delegate rate for these courses. So as long as you can register for the 6th of December for the 2017 course, we still do have one more of those about to run, and we'll give you the dates later. And then by the end of the year, if you're looking at any courses for 2018. And also, I think really excitingly, for anyone who does register and attend one of Sandy's courses, she's delighted to be able to offer you a free copy of her book, Women Will Move. As I mentioned earlier, I'd really recommend anyone to have a read of this. It really does give you a bit of, I guess, more food for thought about how you live, not only in business, but everyday life as well, being women in the modern world. So upcoming programs you can see on your screen now. So our Confidence and Assertiveness Women 1, as I mentioned, is going on in Melbourne next week. And then as we move into 2018, we've got our Moving Up to Leadership Women in February in Brisbane, the Confidence and Assertiveness again in Melbourne in March, and again the Moving Up to Leadership in Melbourne in March as well.
Holly,
so please don't worry.
Holly, if I can just interrupt, we've also specifically scheduled those two programs in the week of March the 5th because March the 8th is International Women's Day. So I know that you've had a lot of inquiries about them already, and I think those courses are going to book out pretty quickly. So great way to celebrate International Women's Day throughout that whole week. Back to you, Holly.
Good point there. So yeah, as Sandy mentioned, a lot of these courses do book out, and we do have maximum numbers, so let us know quite soon if you do want to kind of join those. We also do run them in-house, so you can run them specifically just for your organisation, and we can talk a bit more if you are interested. Please do get in touch with us, and we can discuss further how in-house training runs. There's also a special discount code for you guys, which you can see now, and Sandy's also going to share some of the contact details to get in touch with us. Please don't worry if you haven't got a pen or paper or any way to kind of save this information. We will be sending out, obviously, with the survey about the community groups, more information by email. So do look out for that, and then we can provide you with any information you're looking for. So I think that concludes everything we were going through. Sandy, is there any more kind of thoughts you want to add before we move on to our Q&A session?
Not especially. It's just I've really enjoyed this, and I've had a look at some of the questions in the question pane, and it both saddens me but fills my heart. It saddens me that there's, you know, so many women facing so many challenges in their lives, but it fills my heart because it's exactly what I love to help with. So let's dig into the questions. It would be my question.
Yeah, we're getting some fantastic comments here as well, guys. We really appreciate some of your comments on the webinar. I think, Sandy, we could potentially be looking at doing another one during International Women's Week. I think that would be a very good shout, bring in mind some comments. But let's start off with let's start off with one question we've got. I think this was one that came in when we were talking about the gender differences. So it says, I work in a very male-dominated environment. Any tips for being more assertive in this everyday situation?
So was the question, are there any tips to being more assertive in that situation?
Yeah, so any tips for being more assertive in a male-dominated situation?
I guess my big tip is, whether it's male-dominated or otherwise, the 6 characteristics I talked about are still the 6 characteristics. I think sometimes with huge respect, and I mean this to the person who's asked the question, sometimes it's what we're caught up in our heads that is stopping us from finding our courageous voice. It's like, oh, well, they're a man, or he's older, or he's, and even a female who's been in their job longer or worked with the company longer, we go, oh, you know, we put ourselves down and we diminish our skills and capabilities. I've worked with a lot of women in very male-dominated professions and industries, construction, research, scientific research, IT, law, and I know it, I absolutely respect it, feels a lot harder when you're surrounded with that sort of whole culture of men. And part of it is like taking a deep breath and going, okay, I know I'm the minority here, and I still have a voice, and I still have things to contribute. I hope that's helpful.
So the next one moving on to is, I don't like the term work-life balance. For me, it is work I get paid for versus work I just have to do in the other 8 hours of my day. Is balance really possible?
Great question. Whoever's asked that, I'm exactly on the same page as you. I actually talk about it being a B myth, a balance myth, because it's as if we have all the aspects of our work life, our income-producing life, boxed up and on one side of a seesaw, and then all the aspects of outside work life, like, you know, if we got work over here and then life over here, it's like there's no life at work. And get all this stuff, and then we finally got it balanced, and we hold our breath and pray nothing changes. Have to work overtime on a project at work, or one of our kids or parents get sick. I think of it as happiness, satisfaction. What I aim for in my life, Holly, is at the end of every week or fortnight, can I put my head on the pillow at night and say, I'm happy with how I've spent my time. So I absolutely agree with the person who's asked the question. I don't believe in work-life balance either.
Yeah, I think it is a struggle that a lot of women are facing nowadays, especially. The next one, actually, Sandy, I think is a really particularly good one, is you've obviously talked about assertiveness and building that, but how can you turn around a work situation that has had a bad history over several years so they can then effectively work together, they can assertively and effectively work together going forward?
You know, questions come into my mind, including does the other person feel it's a problem, or are they merely going about their life and, you know, not cognizant of the challenge and the emotional fallout of this for the person who's asked the question. I think one of the keys would be to recognize there's a lot of baggage there, which obviously this person has done, and then get rid of that baggage, discharge that baggage. So one of the activities I talk about with women is, the simplest one I can describe right now is setting yourself set a timer. So the timer might be 5 minutes, 10 minutes, whatever, And you start the timer and you start writing, not full paragraphs or anything like that, but just writing all the angst, all the rubbish, all the about it. And when the timer goes off, and funnily, most often what happens is we stop writing before the timer goes off, but when the timer goes off, that's it. You've put it all there. And then you either take it somewhere where you can safely burn it. So when I do this, I have a big metal mixing bowl, and I take the paper out into my garden or to a park. You're laughing at me, Holly, but I really do this. And I burn the paper. And as I burn it, I consciously tell myself, I choose to let go of this now. I choose to let go of this. Because oftentimes it's what the impact of the baggage is doing on us that is important to recognize. So that's one of the kind of activities I'd suggest. And then the second stage I would suggest is thinking about what for you is not negotiable. What for you is definitely not okay behavior or not acceptable or comfortable for you in this situation. And then see if you can have a conversation around those things that you are important to you and about which there is no negotiation. You can't be flexible about it. For instance, if somebody's calling you crass terms, to me, not negotiable. So step one, discharge some of the energy. Step two, get clear on what you really want to go into bat for and have a conversation about.
Okay, this next one, Sandy, is quite interesting, I think. It says, my workplace often mentions women and the promotion of women. Sometimes I think the emphasis on women makes it worse, as the men around me are very negative about it. Do I ignore it, or do I step in and talk about it?
Can you read the first part again, Holly? What's happening about?
Yeah, of course. So it says, my workplace often mentions women and the promotion of women. Sometimes I think the emphasis on women makes it worse.
Yeah. Look, I understand why organizations do that. I mean, now we've got these things called, employers of choice, and we've all got all sorts of diversity and inclusion programs running. I think maybe what this person could do is simply, when she hears comments from the men around her, is to simply say, guys, I sometimes think the focus, we're overly focusing on the promotion of women as well. But I guess the pendulum's going to swing a bit, perhaps emphasizing promotion of women until it finally reaches a comfortable midpoint. I haven't said that very, very clearly, but because I do think that's what's happening, is that for many years, like if we go back to the 70s, and there's probably women on the line who might have not have even been born then, but if we go back to the 70s and the real feminist movement and the bra burning and the man hating that's associated with all that, the pendulum has swung back from that a little bit, but we're still looking very much at things like quotas on boards and stuff, which personally I don't agree with. But I almost think some of that has to occur to help women step up and live their leadership. And the person who asks the question could perhaps just respond to men as she hears them comment about it, to say how she feels about it and say, yeah, I sometimes think we focus on it a bit too much too, guys.
Definitely. Well, I think that all feeds into, obviously, finding your voice and being appropriately kind of assertive at that point to have the confidence to speak up and, I guess, acknowledge it. So if we're moving on now, Sandy, to the next one we've got. It says, how do you make the move into leadership when predominantly the business is 98% men? It feels like there is absolutely no chance as it is so dominated.
First of all, I've got to say I'm loving these questions. So how you do it is you just do it. And I don't mean to be disrespectful in that answer, but a lot of research that has come out now is saying, why do we seem to have so many women in senior leadership positions or on boards or whatever? And research shows, and let's say there's a job and it requires 5 things. If a man has 2 or 3 of those characteristics or competencies or qualifications, a man will have a go. And I'm generalizing hugely here, but a man will generally go, well, I'll figure out the rest when I get the job. Whereas if this job is advertising 5 things, a woman will often not even apply or consider applying unless she has those 5 things completely down pat, totally experienced, totally handled, plus probably another 1 or 2, because we doubt ourselves so. So I guess it would be about, if we do want to apply for a promotion, is we talk to the person to whom the application, and we get very clear on what are the key criteria based on which we're selecting the successful applicant. I want to be really clear on those so that I can address those very specifically and clearly in my application. And in the end, if you've done that and you still don't get the job, the number one thing we need to do is say, well, I guess it's what I would encourage women not to say. Often what we do is go, oh, see, I knew I wasn't good enough. Oh, see, I know I never get a promotion. Whereas the reality of it is perhaps we weren't the best candidate. Perhaps there were other factors at play. Perhaps they found someone with all 5 things they were looking for, plus another 5 that they weren't specifically advertising for, but they're a bonus. So I think women can be very beat up on ourselves and, get on our whip and, whip ourselves mercilessly and say something was all our fault, or say, see, there's the evidence, I'm not good enough. So I'm not saying it would be easy where you've got 98% of your employees, 98% of the staff are male. It's definitely not going to be easy, but I'd go to the person making the decision and ask for a conversation around clarity, around criteria for successful application.
And I guess feedback on applications as well, being clear and assertive on that you'd like some feedback and that you'd like, I guess, a bit more narrative around your performance or the kind of suitability for the job as well.
That's a really good point, Holly, because often people in general, this isn't just women struggle with this, but we often aren't proactive in seeking feedback. Like we kind of think, oh, I haven't gotten any feedback lately. Nobody's telling me if I'm doing a good job or not. Well, we can go. That's part of being assertive, I think, is to go to people and say, I'd like 10, 15 minutes of your time, perhaps over a cup of coffee, to get 3 the feedback and be specific. You say, I want to know, what am I doing really well? What is one area that I could improve on? And what do you think the next step for me in my development is? And, hopefully someone would be responsive to that. They'd probably be blown away that, wow, somebody's actually asking for feedback. But that's a really important thing for us to do, particularly as women, because otherwise the human brain, if it's looking for an answer for something and it doesn't know the answer, it tends to just make one up. And sadly, as women, we often make up a negative answer. We make up a limiting answer for ourselves.
That's a very good point, Sandy. And I think moving on to the next one, I think this just highlights how important it's going to be, these community groups that you're going to be setting up, Sandy, for anyone who does go through your training programs. It says, I have found that having female mentors in leadership roles has helped me through my career. Unfortunately, I am now in a position where I am no longer have appropriate mentors of this kind. Can you suggest how women can access appropriate mentors outside of their workplace? Are there any associations or something similar for working mums would be ideal?
Well, there's a new business opportunity for us, Holly. I just said, a lot of the work that I've done with mentoring is actually in-house within an organization. But some organizations don't have a formal mentoring program, but I've run sessions for their women on how to ask for a mentor. The first thing we need to do, if we're looking for a mentor, whether it's within work or outside of work, is to sit and dot point, what am I looking for? What do I need help with? What kind of guidance do I want? What specifically do I want this mentor to be for me or do for me? There's a lot of times I think maybe we just want the mentor as a sounding board. Because I know sometimes when I've been asked, oh, Sandy, will you be my mentor? My first feeling overwhelmed, like, oh, if I say yes, what am I getting into? So for anybody wanting to ask someone to consider being their mentor, get clear on what you'd like from them, get clear on how often you'd want to meet, what form of contact you'd want, what the duration of your contact with them would be. You know, you're talking about once a week, or are you talking about, you know, a 1.5 hour lunch period once a fortnight or once a month?
Mm-hmm.
Are you wanting email access to them between your meetings with them, or telephone or text access? But particularly, why have you chosen them? You know, why them? What is it that you feel you can gain from them that's made you ask the question? And then I always say, when you've asked the question, in fact, even as you start to ask the question, say, look, I absolutely don't need a response immediately. I'd like to bounce an idea off you, something I've been thinking about, and I would really appreciate it if you consider being my mentor and letting me know, say, in a week's time, how you feel about it. And here's what I mean by that request.
Mm. And Sandy, just to jump in there as well, a question that I've kind of got off the back of that one is, what would you say to women about them actually actively offering out their services as a mentor themselves? I mean, the lady that has asked this question, I'm wondering whether, you know, I'm sure she's got some fantastic experience to maybe graduates or women, you know, entering the workplace. What would you say about women actually offering themselves up and taking, I guess, that active lead in offering mentoring services themselves?
I'd say go for it. I mean,
yeah.
What a gift you would be giving someone. And there's a new term that's being used a lot now, Holly, called reverse mentoring. And the term merely refers to shifting our perception about who could be a mentor or not. We often think mentor is senior, experienced, is older, etc. Whereas I've actually got a young person at the moment mentoring me in social media, because I can type stuff in, but I don't really get, you know, what's my purpose? You know, what's the long-term goal here? So reverse mentoring means, you know, perhaps approaching someone younger. This is back to, you know, if you want a mentor. But anybody can be a mentor. Anybody can help someone else, irrespective of who's got what age or whatever. And I think women, if you see someone who you feel has ability and is perhaps hiding their light under a bushel a little bit, maybe another woman who you feel find her courageous voice, maybe a woman you just want to give a leg up to, you can go offer and say, look, I'd be happy to meet with you once a month, or I'd be happy to have a phone call with you once a fortnight for an hour or so.
Definitely. I think it's important that women start empowering other women, depending on, not mattering what kind of level you are within the business. So moving on to the next one, Sandy. This is another good one. How do you deal with passive-aggressive people who are often more damaging than bullies?
I deal with it in the same way that I would deal with someone who's kind of openly aggressive. And, you know, often we use this term passive-aggressive. Oh, it's got a really bad feel to it, doesn't it? It's kind of like sneaky, it's behind your back. I think of it as two-faced a lot. You know, it's where to your face, Holly, I'll tell you what I think you want to hear, but behind your back, oh, I tell people what I really think of you, sort of thing. And if I found out someone was behaving in that way about me and my behavior, I would approach them and I would say, look, I'm concerned that there's a problem in our communication, and that there are some things you'd like to say to me that you haven't yet said, and I would like us to get the cards on the table.
Definitely. There's a couple of bits here, Sandy, that aren't so much questions, but they're more, I guess, statements. So I'd kind of like your thoughts on them. The first one says, using the word bullying at work can often cause more problems when managers are not receptive.
Yes. Every organization should have a policy about bullying and harassment. If they want to be, if they ever did have a case, a bullying or harassment case, go to Fair Work Commission. One of the first things they're going to be asked for is show us your policy. Second thing, the employer organization would be asked, how do you implement this policy? How do you monitor it? How do you enforce it? So should be open to it.
Yeah.
And if you feel that you need to talk to someone about some bullying that's going on who isn't going to be open to it just because of the term bully, then I'd say use a term of unfair treatment.
Definitely good advice.
Yeah, unfair treatment or discriminating treatment or demeaning treatment.
Okay. Another one here again that is just a sentence, though I think it's a very, very important one, is sometimes at work when I feel I am being assertive about non-negotiable areas, I'm told I am being too sensitive.
I'm looking out my window.
On that one, hey?
Look, we may be being told we're too sensitive. What it gets back to is, do you feel you're being too sensitive? And or is this something that in some way you could become a little bit flexible about? Just looking on my desk here if I can find an appropriate prop, which here we go, here's a prop. I often talk to women about get clear on what's not negotiable, like something that's really important to you. And let's suppose this jar holds my not negotiables. The size of the jar, relatively small. And then I would say, then also get clear on what you can be negotiable about or flexible about. And here would be the relative size of that. So for instance, what I'm saying is, not only do these things here, your negotiables, are your currencies of exchange. This is how you can, still being a team player. I can't work late Thursday night. That's not negotiable. But I can come in early Friday. I can come in early Thursday. I can work through my lunch hour Thursday. All these things are what you're willing to do. So if we go back to the issue of sensitivity, I'd encourage the woman to think about, is it not negotiable? Is it really, to what degree and in what way is the issue really impacting her? And by all means, if it's impacting you and it's important to you, then construct an assertive conversation. And if somebody then turns around in that conversation and says, I think you're just being too sensitive, you can take a deep breath and say, I hear you believe I'm being too sensitive. For me, this is really important.
Yeah.
Notice as I say that, it's like one of the words I don't use, and I encourage all the women on the line to never use, is but. Right? Because if I say to you, Holly, I hear you telling me I'm too sensitive, but as soon as you hear the but, you'll probably not listen much to what else I say. Because whatever's coming after the but is, of course, my counter argument. And so I encourage women to forget the but and just turn it into two sentences. I hear you saying, you believe I'm too sensitive. For me, this is really important.
That's a good point. I think the but makes it sound like you're being dismissive of whatever they've had to say, depending on what you're saying next. Moving on to the very last statement we've got here, Sandy, because I appreciate we've gone a little bit over our allocated time. There's been so much great conversation going on.
I'm loving it.
To leave you the final thoughts is, one of our participants would like to say, women have only had equality for about 50 years. It is like a new car. Men have had a few thousand years. We will calm down a bit once we have worn our new car in, which I think is an interesting analogy.
That's brilliant. Look, totally random. Can you make note of that lady's name? Because yeah. I'd love to send her a copy of my book as a gift.
Great.
I think that's a brilliant comment she's made. Because it does a couple of things. It helps us look at being perhaps a bit easier on ourselves, and it helps us realize, look, we're talking about evolution, not revolution. Like my mother, bless her, was always gobsmacked at, oh my gosh, look at this job you got at your young age, Sandy, like when I'd become a manager, because she's only 30 years older than me, and in her day, you had to resign the minute you announced you were pregnant.
Yeah.
So, things have changed and things will continue to change. So what's the first name of the lady who made the comment?
The first name of the lady is Caroline.
Caroline, I look forward to sending you a copy of my book, and thank you for sharing what you did. It's great. I love it. And hopefully you haven't copyrighted it, because I might use that in the workshops, Holly.
Awesome, guys. Well, that's all we've got time for now, and I think we've pretty much got through all the questions we had there. But if anybody else does have any further questions, please do reach out to us and let us know those. And also, please do respond to the survey we send out about these community groups. As we said, anybody who goes through one of Sandy's programs will automatically be kind of invited to join these community groups. And also, they'll get a complimentary copy of her book, anybody who goes through the training either the end of this year or 2018. So yeah, thank you so much, both Sandy, for your time today. I think from some of the comments we've been getting, it's been a fantastic webinar and platform for a lot of women. And I personally as well have really enjoyed and feel like I've learned a lot out of this as well. And thanks everyone for your time for kind of dialing in today. We've had some fantastic kind of numbers, and we peaked at about 149 people on the line. So it goes to show how important this kind of topic is for women all across Australia. So many thanks all, and we'll keep in touch with you all about future webinars and seminars that we will be hosting on this topic.
Great. And I've just seen a comment come up. Thank you. I feel inspired. And I love that. I love that, Holly. It's been wonderful.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much, guys. Have a great afternoon, and we hope to speak with a lot of you again in the future.
Okay. Cheers, Holly. We'll talk soon.
Bye.
Bye.